Ozana lived in a small room with cracked walls, a rusted ceiling fan, and a door that never fully closed. It wasn't much. There were days when the roof leaked during the rain, when the light bulb flickered like it was tired of glowing, and when silence felt louder than any storm outside. But it was hers, her little corner of the world, her matchbox, as people like to call it, always with a laugh, never with love. She didn't grow up with luxury or even comfort. She grew up with resilience. That small room had seen her cry at night and wipe her tears in the morning. It had held her when no one else did. And somehow, despite everything, it never felt empty. It felt full of dreams. Quiet, invisible dreams that sat on the floor with her every night. Her ex, Toba, hadn't come to see her in months. When they were together, he would complain about her room all the time. Too small, too hot, too local. He wanted girls who lived in big city apartments, not someone who lived next to goats and dusty roads. But Ozana believed in love. She thought he did too. Until he left. When he returned, it wasn't alone. He brought a girl with him, Bolanle. She was tall, light-skinned, dressed in silk, and smelled like expensive things. Her nails were longer than Ozana's dreams, and her laugh was sharp enough to cut self-esteem. They entered her room like tourists visiting a place beneath them. Bolanle looked around and smirked. "So this is where you used to live, Toba?" "Wow. It's giving refugee vibes," Toba laughed. "I told you. Back then I had to squat in this box and act like it was normal. But you see what I escaped, yeah?" Ozana stood there, quiet. She didn't defend her space. She didn't defend herself. She just listened. Their voices echoed in her head like a song she never wanted to hear again. Bolanle pretended to be curious. "But you said she had big dreams, right? Real estate or something?" Toba grinned. She wanted to build houses. From this matchbox. Can you imagine? The laughter returned, louder this time. Ozana didn't laugh. She didn't cry either. She just stood still, as if her body had turned into stone, and her heart was being carved into something harder. They left 10 minutes later. Didn't even say goodbye. For them it was just a funny visit. For her it was the beginning of war. That night she sat on her mattress in the corner, the fan above her squeaked, and the air was thick with shame. She took out her notebook, the one she kept hidden beneath her pillow, and opened a blank page. On top she wrote, "I will build something so big they will never be able to laugh under it." No poetry, no emotion, just a promise. The next morning she woke up before the sun. While the village still slept, Ozana was out sweeping the front of her compound, preparing to clean shops in the next town. She had taken 3 small cleaning jobs just to save for her online real estate classes. Her phone was cracked. Her charger had to be held at a certain angle to work, but every night she would stay awake learning terms like lease, mortgage, and equity as if her life depended on it, because it did. She started selling akara on weekends, used her breaks to study blueprints, started networking with small-time landlords, and while Toba was taking selfies with Bolanle in hotel lobbies, Ozana was calculating how many steps she'd need to go from matchbox to mansion. People in the village noticed a change. She no longer greeted everyone with long conversations. She no longer wasted time. She was moving different, focused, unbothered. Some said she had gone mad, some said she was bitter, but no one said she was lazy. One evening, sitting outside her room, she heard her neighbors talking. "That's the girl whose boyfriend left her for that city girl." "Yes, the one with the room like a chicken coop." I heard she's still trying to become a landlord." "From this space?" "Impossible." Ozana smiled. She didn't hate them, they just didn't know. That small rooms can still hold giant plans, and so began her quiet rise, built not on followers or fake friends, but on focus, pain, and one powerful truth. Sometimes the smallest room holds the strongest woman. Weeks passed, but nothing about the village changed. The dusty roads still coughed under passing feet, the air still carried the smell of burning firewood, and the shops still sold the same cold soda in recycled glass bottles. But Ozana, She was no longer the same. While people saw the same girl with worn slippers and a quiet voice, inside her something had shifted. She wasn't dreaming anymore. She was planning. Every naira she earned was folded and hidden like treasure, saved with military discipline. She cleaned shops, sold thrift clothes, and stayed up late watching free real estate tutorials on a phone that had more cracks than apps. Then one day, on a rusted notice board outside a small store, she saw it, a listing for an uncompleted one-bedroom building. It was ugly, broken, and abandoned, but it was land. She called the number with hope in her voice, but the man on the other end just laughed and hung up. He didn't think a village girl with no car and no title deserved to buy land. Ozana didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply turned to the next page in her notebook and wrote, "Not this one, but the next one." She started working twice as hard, helping a local real estate agent for free, watching how he handled buyers, how he spoke with confidence, how he walked like every piece of land already belonged to him. He called her small girl, but she didn't mind. Every insult was a new brick in her foundation. Then one afternoon, while cleaning his desk, she found another listing. A 2-room cement block on the outskirts, no paint, no tiles, just a structure and soil. Nobody wanted it. "Too far," the agent said. "Too dusty." But Ozana didn't fear dust. She came from it. She found the seller, an old widow with soft eyes and tired shoulders, and instead of negotiating, she told her the truth, that she was tired of people laughing at her, that she had dreams bigger than her room, and that she just needed one chance. The woman smiled, nodded, and gave her 6 months to pay. Ozana handed over 50,000 naira, the largest amount she had ever let go of in one day, and signed the deal with nothing but faith. She didn't celebrate. She didn't post online. She walked to the house, opened the crooked wooden door, and stood inside her future. It was broken, but it was hers. She swept the floor, painted the front wall with leftover paint, and sat on the empty concrete block that would soon be someone's living room. The neighbors laughed. Some said she was mad. Others said she was cursed with ambition. But no one could deny that she had done what most only talked about. Meanwhile, Toba and Bolanla were still showing off on Instagram, clinking glasses at rooftop restaurants, laughing under filters, still thinking Ozana was stuck, but she didn't need to respond. Her proof was in the paper she held, the key she now owned, and the door she had walked through by herself. She didn't move in. She wasn't done. This was just the floor plan. The real building was still inside her. Ozana didn't call herself a landlord yet, but deep inside she knew she had just crossed a line that most never even approached. That small, broken 2-room cement block wasn't much, but it was the start of something nobody in her village could see yet, not even the ones laughing from their balconies. She woke up earlier than before, now carrying a second notebook, one for ideas and another for expenses. She wasn't trying to get rich fast. She was trying to get stable forever. She'd buy leftover tiles from construction sites, pieces that no one wanted. She'd haggle for broken wood and fix it with borrowed tools. When she painted the inside walls by hand with a plastic bucket and homemade brush, people laughed again. "Is she building a mansion or a mistake?" someone asked. But Azana never answered noise. She only responded with results. One day, a woman with 2 children walked past and asked if the house would be for rent. She had been kicked out by her husband's family and needed somewhere safe. Ozana's heart pulled. She didn't even finish the roof yet, but something inside her knew. This was the moment. She told the woman to come back in 2 weeks. Ozana borrowed money from 2 friends, sold the last of her clothes she didn't need, and finished the roof with local laborers she paid with food and sweat. By the time the woman returned, the house was simple but livable. A proper door, a curtain as a window cover, a floor clean enough to eat on. She charged her only a small rent, enough to pay back what she owed. When she collected that first rent in cash, it wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that her dream had left the page and stepped into the world. She held the money for a long time before putting it into a box she labeled "Next Plot." She didn't post about it. She didn't tell the woman she was her first tenant. She just smiled and said, "Welcome home." Meanwhile, Toba had started asking around. quietly, of course. He heard someone mention that Ozana had bought land, but he laughed it off. She probably just painted someone's old shack, he said. But deep down it bothered him. Bolanle's money wasn't stretching like before, and his own job applications were going unanswered. They still went out, still wore designer clothes, but everything now was on borrowed cards and broken timing. He scrolled through Ozana's old pictures one night, thinking maybe he had misjudged her. Maybe. But he shook the thought off and told himself she was still just the girl in the matchbox. Ozana, however, was now attending small real estate workshops in town. She never spoke much during the sessions, just sat in the back, taking notes, observing everything. One evening, she stayed behind and asked the speaker, a woman named Madame Rini, how to apply for property registration. The woman was impressed by her questions. "You own property?" she asked. "One," Ozana said. "Soon two." Madame Rini gave her her number and told her to come by the office next week. That night, Ozana walked home through the quiet street with no street lights, but her feet didn't feel the ground. For the first time in her life, she was being seen by someone who mattered. Not because of where she came from, but because of where she was going. The girl they laughed at for having four walls too close together now had someone asking her how many plots she wanted next. She wasn't rich. She wasn't even comfortable. But now she was in motion, and Ozana had learned the secret. Some people build with speed, but the strong ones, they build one brick at a time. It started with a whisper, the way all powerful things do. One woman told another, who told her cousin, who told a shopkeeper, and before long half the village had heard about that girl with the two-room house. Ozana wasn't just a girl with a small room anymore. Now she was the one who had bought land, painted it herself, rented it out, and collected money while still sweeping shops in the morning like nothing had changed. They didn't understand it. They whispered about it like it was magic. "She's doing it quietly, oh," some said. "Her ex must be regretting by now." Others laughed, but Ozana didn't hear these whispers. Not because they weren't loud, but because her mind was busy with walls, floors, and possibilities. She had already started scouting her second property, this time near the market road, where foot traffic was high and rent could be better. She wanted to build a simple four-room compound, rent it out cheap, and reinvest. Nothing flashy, just solid, steady, smart. But when she approached the landowner, an older man named Baba Kunle, he looked her up and down and chuckled. "You want to buy land?" "You?" She nodded, calmly. "Bring me a serious buyer," he said, brushing her off like dust, but someone else had overheard. A girl named Alero, who had grown up with Ozana and had always watched her from the sidelines. Alero didn't laugh at Ozana, but she didn't help her either. She had always thought Ozana was too quiet to matter. But now, hearing that Ozana was negotiating land deals, something shifted in her. The next day, Alero started asking around about properties too. She didn't know much, but she copied what she'd seen Ozana do. She even went to the same agent and pretended to be more serious, just to see if she'd get better offers. Word spread quickly. "Now there are two of them," someone whispered. But it wasn't the same. Alero wanted the look of success. Ozana wanted the foundation, and that difference was everything. Meanwhile, Toba had started noticing the whispers too. He heard one at the barber shop, Moscorp. Someone mentioned Ozana's name while talking about cheap housing. At first, he thought he misheard, but then it came up again. This time at a wedding, where someone casually said, "That girl from back then, she owns property now." It hit him like a mosquito you can't swat. Small, annoying, but impossible to ignore. He tried to laugh it off with Bolanle. "I think Ozana's flipping mud huts now," he joked. But Bolanle raised an eyebrow. "Didn't she used to clean your shoes?" she asked. "Yeah, and now apparently she builds houses," he said, forcing a laugh. But that night, he scrolled through her social media again. No updates, no selfies. Just an old profile picture and silence. That bothered him more. Because real success doesn't post itself. It shows up in whispers. Back in the village, Ozana finally got her break. Baba Kunle's nephew overheard her being dismissed and approached her privately. I know of a plot, he said. Small, but good soil, and the owner is tired of holding it. Within a week, she was standing on a dry patch of land, imagining the blueprint in her head. She negotiated hard, this time with confidence. No stammering, no shy smiles, just facts, numbers, and deadlines. They agreed on a payment plan. 3 parts over 6 months. Ozana walked home holding the agreement like it was made of gold. She didn't tell anyone, not Alero, not the agent, not even her tenant. She just wrote in her notebook, second plot secured. More whispers coming. That same night, Alero tried bragging about a deal she thought she was about to close, but the land had already been taken. By Ozana, people laughed. Ozana is 5 steps ahead, someone said. And just like that, the whispers started changing tone. They were no longer filled with doubt. Now they carried respect, curiosity, even fear. Ozana hadn't raised her voice once, but her walls were speaking now. Toba wasn't the type to admit jealousy, not to others, not even to himself. But something about hearing Ozana's name again and again from random people, in places he least expected, was starting to feel like a thorn in his side. He couldn't ignore it anymore. At first it was small, a casual scroll through her old profile, checking if maybe she'd posted a business page or shared a photo of this so-called house everyone kept mentioning. But there was nothing. No updates, no flexing, no hints of anything, just silence. And somehow that silence made it worse, because if she wasn't posting, then the story must be real. She must actually be doing something worth watching, so he started watching, quietly. He called a friend who lived near the market road and casually asked, You heard anything about Ozana, that small girl from my past? The friend paused, then laughed. You mean landlady Ozana? That hit different. I heard she's got 2 places already. People say she's building something new. Real estate Atoba forced a chuckle, played it cool, but inside it felt like being slapped with his own old arrogance. That night, he told Bolanle, trying to mask his interest with mockery. Apparently Ozana's some landlord now. Can you imagine? But Bolanle wasn't amused. She didn't even laugh. She was quiet, she said, sipping wine. It's always the quiet ones that move smart. Toba didn't respond. He just stared out the window, hearing Ozana's name replay in his head like a drumbeat. Meanwhile, Ozana had no idea. She was busy inspecting the second plot she had just secured. She paced the land barefoot, dragging her stick in the soil, drawing outlines of future walls, imagining children playing in front, rent payments arriving on time, and peace living inside the walls she built. She wrote out her costs again and again, calculated timelines, and reached out to Madame Rennie to ask about community housing permits. She wasn't building a house, she was building a system, a plan, a pattern. But back in town, Toba wasn't sitting quietly anymore. He reached out to a family friend in real estate and asked how he could get into the business. Told him he had a little capital, wanted to try his hands at land. But what he didn't say was that it wasn't about land. It was about Ozana. He wanted to feel like he hadn't been left behind, that he too could own something, that he too could rise. But Toba didn't come from struggle, he didn't come from sweat, he came from entitlement. And his first deal reflected that. He overpaid for a small plot just to say he bought something. No inspection, no plan, just ego in a rush. He took a selfie on the land, posted it with the caption, Starting small, thinking big, town boss moves. Ozana saw it. Someone sent it to her. She didn't react, didn't even smile. She just turned the page in her notebook and wrote, He's watching. Let him. I'm working. Her second house was already in motion. The walls were rising, the community was talking, and now even the boy who once laughed at her ceiling was trying to copy her floor plan. But Ozana wasn't chasing revenge. She was chasing legacy. The difference? She was moving with patience. And Toba, he was moving with panic. The ex had gotten curious, but what he didn't know yet was that curiosity has a price. And some prices come with suspension letters. And the village was finally starting to live. Toba's post got likes, over 300 of them. People commented fire emojis, dropped CEO loading in the replies, and hyped him up like he had just bought half of Lagos. But behind the screen, he had no plan, no builder, no estimate, not even the right land documents. He thought if he flexed hard enough, the blueprint would manifest itself. He forgot that land doesn't bend for clout. It waits for commitment. Meanwhile, Ozana's second project was already halfway up. She had hired 3 local masons, negotiated material prices directly from a struggling supplier, and even arranged a deal to lease construction tools instead of buying them. She knew where every brick was going, because she had placed each one in her mind 100 times before the workers touched them. When Toba finally tried to begin construction, the first hit came. The plot he bought wasn't legally transferable. The guy who sold it didn't even own it. It was a scam, and Toba had no proof. His friend, who introduced him to the seller, stopped answering calls. The documents were fake. The money, gone. When he stormed into the local registry office demanding justice, the officer just stared at him and said, "Next time! Don't try to impress the internet. Impress the papers." That same day, Ozana's second house got its roof. Simple, clean, functional. A local family walked past and asked if she was taking tenants soon. She smiled and said, "Maybe." But that smile held power, the kind that comes from building, not buying. Words started spreading, not just whispers now, full-blown discussions. Ozana doesn't talk, but her cement speaks volumes. She's building steady, not loud. Toba heard all of it. Listen. And when someone tagged him in a post that read, "Real estate isn't Instagram, it's discipline," he didn't reply. He didn't even show Bolanle. He just deleted the old post, quietly. Bolanle noticed his mood shifting. He was agitated, short-tempered. His phone stayed face down now. His jokes weren't landing. She asked once, "Is something wrong?" He said no, but inside everything felt wrong, because the same girl he left in a dusty matchbox room was now owning rooms, one brick at a time, while he had been scammed trying to catch up. Ozana, on the other hand, was drawing her third floor plan by candlelight. This one would be her biggest yet. 6 self-contained rooms with a shared backyard. She wasn't in a rush, but she was in rhythm. One evening, someone publicly tried to compare them. A local gossip account posted, "Ozana versus Toba? Who's winning the hustle war?" Toba didn't comment. Bolanle liked it and scrolled. But Ozana? She didn't even look at it. Someone showed her, expecting a reaction. She smiled and said, "This is not a race. I'm building a village." That line traveled further than she expected. It hit people different. No claps, no emojis, just quiet respect. And that's when it became clear. Some build to be seen. Others build so people can live. Toba had chased bricks for 150 years. Ozana was laying them for legacy. And between the two, only one of them had anything standing. Ozana's third project started with a whisper to herself, the same way her first did. Quiet, determined, and already imagined in her head before the land was even confirmed. This time she didn't just want rooms. She wanted a compound. 6 self-contained units, a shared backyard, and a front gate with a lock she chose. She walked the land 3 times before making the decision. She checked the sun's direction, the water flow during rain, the soil's softness, and even the neighbor's energy. By now, the local agents didn't laugh when she walked into their offices. They offered her seats. They brought her water. She wasn't the matchbox girl anymore. She was Madame Ozana. And yet, she stayed quiet. No Instagram page, no shouting, no announcements. Her walls always spoke louder than her voice. Meanwhile, Toba was in shambles. After the scam, he tried to gather himself, but everything he touched now felt slippery. He borrowed money to try and buy another plot, but this time the seller pulled out halfway and kept the deposit. He tried to act like it didn't matter, said he was waiting for the right location. But Bolanle had started asking real questions. "Why haven't we started building anything yet?" "I thought you said you were going to be like Ozana." That name again. It felt like a slap wrapped in perfume. He snapped at her once and she didn't speak to him for hours. Toba was slipping. His confidence, his reputation, his wallet, all slowly burning. And while he was losing his grip, Ozana was laying bricks. Her new site was already dug out. She had partnered with a local Mason cooperative and offered them a profit-sharing model. They didn't understand it fully, but they trusted her because she paid on time, treated them with respect, and showed up with clean boots. Every decision she made had a reason behind it. Every corner of her blueprint had purpose, and the city was watching. People who once ignored her now nodded when she passed. Children waved. Other young girls started asking her questions. How she started, how she kept going. She didn't give long speeches, just short advice like start with what you have or learn before you borrow. But the most powerful thing she gave them was example. Proof that dreams didn't need permission. Back in the crumbling apartment Toba now shared with Bolanle, the tension was thicker than the paint peeling off their walls. She scrolled on her phone constantly now, liking posts from real builders, people who actually finished what they started. And one night she said what Toba feared most. Maybe you should just ask her for help. He exploded. Help? From that girl? Never. But even he didn't believe his own voice. That same week, Ozana received a message from someone unexpected. A childhood friend named Mika, now working with the city council housing board. He had heard about her work from a cousin, said her projects were clean, efficient, and community-focused. He asked if she would consider submitting a proposal for an affordable housing partnership the city was piloting. She paused. Not because she wasn't ready, but because she knew what this meant. It meant her story was about to outgrow her village. It meant someone from her past, someone who once saw her carry buckets on her head, now saw her as a builder of cities. She didn't reply immediately. She just looked at her newest building, still without a roof, and smiled. Not because it was done, but because it was hers, and it was rising. Toba, on the other hand, sat staring at his phone, refreshing his email for a response from a new investor who had just ghosted him. He had promised Bolanle that the deal was locked, that things were turning around, but there was no deal, no money, just silence. And as his building dreams cracked, Ozana's kept stacking, brick by brick, blessing by blessing. Envy doesn't show up loud. Not at first. Creeps in like a soft whisper, a crack in the wall. A voice in your head saying, you should have been the one. That voice was screaming inside Toba now. Every time someone mentioned Ozana, it hit harder. It wasn't just gossip anymore. Her name was appearing in articles, in WhatsApp groups, even in small-time business blogs. People were using her as an example. If Ozana can do it, why not you? That sentence was haunting him, because he knew the answer. She worked, he didn't. He posted, she built. And now, with Bolanle slowly detaching from him, with debt piling behind fake shoes and unpaid rent, he panicked. That panic turned to a plan, reckless, rushed, and rooted in ego. He decided to announce a massive project, a housing estate. Of course, it wasn't real, but he printed flyers, paid a graphics guy to design 3D mock-ups, and even hired some young boys to wear branded polos and pose near an empty field. Tobaville Heights, he called it. Bolanle saw the rollout and smiled for the first time in weeks. This looks serious, she said. I'm proud of you. Toba nodded, chest out, stomach tight with fear, because he had no permits, no land ownership, no investor, nothing, just envy with a logo. Meanwhile, Ozana sat in a dusty office 2 towns away, waiting to meet Mika again. She had considered his proposal and was ready to listen, but seeing him again after so many years brought back more than business thoughts. He had been kind back then, a quiet boy who once helped her carry water, who defended her when others teased her for her patched skirts. Now he wore fitted suits and talked like someone who belonged in boardrooms, but when he saw her, his eyes softened. Ozana, he said, I always knew you weren't meant for that room. They talked. He showed her the housing project. 10 units, government-backed, long-term partnership, her kind of work, community-based, scalable, legacy level. She didn't smile. She just nodded and said, Send the documents. I'll read everything. Back in the city, Toba's fake estate launch had gone viral. Influencers reposted it. His old friends congratulated him. For 2 days, he felt powerful. Until the third day, when someone from the local housing board filed a complaint. The land he was using for his scam launch was under government restriction. Illegal use. Fraud. A quiet investigation began, but before the report reached him, Bolanle got a call. Her father's friend, a city planner, had seen the flyers. Tell your boyfriend to stop before someone gets arrested, he said coldly. She confronted Toba, and everything cracked. He shouted, denied, then admitted. She didn't say a word after that, just packed a bag and walked out. He tried calling, no answer, tried texting, no blue ticks. He stood alone in that apartment, surrounded by fake plans and unpaid bills, wondering how everything slipped through his fingers. And at that very hour, Ozana walked across her new land, the third plot officially registered in her name. She took nothing from anyone. She lied to no one. And yet, her name was now a brand of integrity. That night, someone from Toba's former investor circle messaged her privately, said they were looking to support female-led projects with track records. She didn't even reply yet, just forwarded it to her assistant. Yes, assistant, because Ozana had just hired one. Meanwhile, Toba sat on the edge of his bed, watching an Instagram reel of her second building being painted. No caption, just bricks, progress, and silence. The exact thing he once laughed at was now everything he couldn't touch. That is the price of envy. It costs you everything, and leaves you watching from behind a screen you can no longer afford to replace. The ground beneath Ozana's feet didn't just feel solid now, it felt like it was rising to meet her. With 3 plots under her name and her second property nearly filled with tenants, she was no longer just building homes. She was building presence. Every wall she raised wasn't just cement and paint. It was a line drawn between who she used to be and who she was becoming. The government partnership proposal with Mika sat on her table, stamped, sealed, and waiting. And while she took her time reading every clause, what she was really doing was studying Mika. He hadn't changed much. Still gentle, still smart, but now sharper, more polished, like the version of himself that once belonged in her dreams but never had timing. He was the first person in a long time who spoke to her without expecting to teach her something. He didn't offer help. He offered space. And somehow that was louder than all the praise she'd been getting lately. Meanwhile, across the city, Toba's fake empire was falling apart. And this time, there were receipts. An anonymous blog had posted screenshots from 2 of his old clients, people he had borrowed money from for previous projects that never happened. One claimed he owed them over 400,000 naira. The other shared a voice note where Toba promised a double return by month end 2 years ago. The post went viral. His comment section turned into a graveyard. This you? Madame Ozana warned us without saying a word. Real estate or real lies? Bolanle, though already gone, unfollowed him publicly. It was the softest yet loudest middle finger he'd ever received. Toba tried damage control. He called friends, blamed fake agents, talked about sabotage, but deep down he knew he wasn't a victim. He was the architect of his own collapse. And what made it worse was what came next. A local property awards committee released a shortlist for an emerging developer recognition prize. Only 5 names were on the list, one of them, Ozana Temitope. She hadn't applied. Mika had nominated her. When she found out, she didn't smile. She didn't post. She just stood in front of her third construction site, looked at the rising foundation and whispered, "Let them nominate the buildings." Across town, Toba watched the same list on his phone, fingers trembling, shame burning under his skin like heat from a fire he started himself. That night he went live on social media for the first time in weeks, hoping to clear the air. But people weren't listening anymore. His voice didn't matter. His lies had expired. The live barely hit 80 viewers. Meanwhile, Ozana was in a quiet meeting with the local school board discussing how to use some of her land for a free after-school program. Not because it was trendy, but because she remembered what it felt like to study by candlelight while neighbors laughed next door. Her buildings were no longer just income, they were answers. Toba had tried to fake a blueprint. Ozana had lived hers. And while he was out there trying to be heard, she was too busy laying the next block. Because some people speak loudly, but others let the walls talk. The sun rose softer that morning, like even the sky knew something important was happening. Ozana stood in front of her third completed building. 6 units, crisp white paint, brown gates, and newly planted trees along the front wall. Everything was quiet, no ribbon cutting, no crowd, just her and the cement that had remembered every tear, every humiliation, every quiet step she took to get here. A man from the contractor team walked over with a clipboard, pointed to the metal sign just above the entrance, and said, "Do you want to approve this final engraving?" She looked up. Ozana Court, Block A. It was the first time her name was on something bigger than a notebook. She stared at it, not smiling, just steady. "Yes," she said. "Let it stay." Meanwhile, the city buzzed about the upcoming property awards event. It wasn't national, not yet, but it mattered to the local industry. And Ozana's nomination had become the talk of the town. Some called her lucky, others called her disciplined. But one thing was certain, she was undeniable. Even those who never respected her now whispered her name like it held weight. And far away, in a room filled with silence and unpaid rent notices, Toba sat scrolling through all of it. He had become a ghost on his own social media, barely liked, barely remembered. When he saw the photo of Ozana Court trending on a property blog, something inside him snapped. He threw his phone across the room. It bounced, cracked, and landed screen up. Still showing her name. He couldn't believe it. The girl he used to send to buy suya at night was now being congratulated by people who once ignored her. Desperation crept in like a thief. He started crafting a public message, pretending to be hacked, claiming mental health struggles, trying to shift the narrative. But before he could post it, he received an email. The same investor he once ghosted was now suing for misrepresentation. His lies had finally turned into legal letters. Meanwhile, Ozana was preparing for the award ceremony, but not like the others. No glam squad, no designer gowns. She wore a locally made dress stitched by a friend from her street. "If I win," she told Mika, who insisted on escorting her, "it's not just for me. It's for the room they laughed at." At the ceremony, they didn't call her name first or second, but when they said Emerging Developer of the Year, Ozana Temitope, the crowd stood before she did. It wasn't loud. It was respectful. Real. She walked to the stage with calm shoulders and heavy silence. No speech, just a nod, a thank you, and a moment. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "She didn't even clap for herself. She lets her buildings do it." But while her name rose in gold, Toba's name was sinking in disgrace. In a final, pathetic attempt to save face, he tried crashing the after-event mixer where local press was gathered. He came dressed in his only remaining statement outfit and walked in like he still belonged. But security stopped him. "You're not on the list," they said. "There must be a mistake," he mumbled. There wasn't. As he stood outside in the night air, trying to find someone to blame, someone to call, someone to notice him, the doors behind him opened. Ozana walked out. For a second, their eyes met. He tried to speak, but she just nodded. Once. Not with anger, not with pity, but with a queen's quiet closure. Then she walked past him like he was just another wall, old, cracked, and no longer part of the structure. That night, Ozana Court trended again. Not because of an award. Cities never stop. No matter who rises or falls, the buildings keep growing, the taxis keep honking, and the sky keeps burning at both ends. Riverside Heights was no different. Its glass towers continued to reflect ambition, and its people continued to chase the next thing. The next title, the next address, the next story. But even as the city moved on, something about it had shifted. The name Ozana Temitope was no longer a whisper. It was a standard, a story parents told their children, a symbol on real estate documents. The girl once mocked for her Matchbox Room had become the woman behind properties with waiting lists and community centers named after mothers she had lost too soon. One of those centers stood proudly in the inner city now. Mama Iredi Hope House, painted soft yellow, with kids laughing in uniforms donated by her foundation. Ozana didn't cut the ribbon when it opened. She simply stood at the back, watching, smiling, then left before speeches began, because she had nothing to prove. Her presence wasn't needed anymore. Her work was speaking fluently. She now spent her days reviewing proposals, mentoring 2 young female interns who reminded her of herself, and managing 3 more builds set to launch next year. She wasn't loud about it. She never had to be. Meanwhile, Toba had faded into the background noise of the city. After the legal warning and the failed public apology, he disappeared for a while. Some said he moved back to his mother's house. Others claimed he was trying to start something small in another city, but no one really knew. He was no longer the topic. He had become a cautionary tale, whispered in networking lounges by men who once called him boss. Bolanle moved on, publicly and unapologetically. Word was she had found someone else, someone quieter, wealthier, and far less concerned with social media clout. No one missed Toba's account. No one noticed when he deleted it. But everyone remembered Ozana's silence, because it had grown louder than any scandal. Emily, Ozana's first tenant, the single mother from way back, had saved enough to return to school. Ozana paid her entrance fee anonymously, never telling her. When Emily asked the registrar who had helped her, they simply said, "It came from someone who knows where you started." The girl who once sold Akara studied under candlelight,